screen to the other monitor. There we go.
There we
Found the
go.
record button.
All right, let's get started then. So, do we want to let's do some quick intros actually. In the next slide, I'll jump in
Hmm.
first. So, I'm Sam, and I'm the product manager here at Softr. Um, my experience in no code kind of spans back since probably around about 2016. I've been building like websites, small side projects for a number of years now, and Software is exactly the company that or the tool that I've been using for quite some time in some shape or form. So I like to build small side projects. I'm non-technical, and I have sold a few in the past. I have made some terrible websites. I've made some great websites. It's a whole mix. Prior to this, I spent 5 years working for a company based in London, and that was a startup studio where I helped early stage founders create tech products. So my day to day is actually working with Tom here quite closely, and the rest of the team at Softr to really listen out to, I guess, the majority of you that are listening in here today, all our customers and users, and really understanding their needs and then trying to build the best possible product for those needs. Um, yeah, Tom, do you want to jump in?
Yep. I'm Tom. Working on the product at Softr, doing some of the brand stuff as well on the side. Um, I've I've had quite the journey with no code as well. Like Sam, kind of came into the space because I was building my own side projects and communities, and then being traditionally just a designer, needing to use these no code tools so that I could kind of give myself superpowers, so to speak. So when the opportunity came to jump on board with Softer and help build this product for people, it was just too good to turn down, really. So yeah, happy to be building, the next wave of no code tools. It's great.
Awesome. Excellent. So let's just jump in then and we'll give you a quick overview of what we're going to be chatting about today. So today we're going to be talking about like all things design and software. So really, what me and Tom have found is we've seen some just incredible examples from the community at Software over the last couple of months. Some great examples of well-designed websites and applications. So what we want to do is share some of the tips, again from what the community have done and some tips from me and Tom, and our experience of the whole design element and the user experience side of things as well. So we're going to be touching on both design and user experience and show you a little bit more around the actual application, the software application itself, and show you how you can create beautiful looking products for your users as well. Hopefully get some tips in there. So first of all, Tom is going to be doing a landing page demo, and we're going to show you just all the different settings and configurations that you've got to your hand at Software. We're going to show you some designs that me and Tom have kind of built up over the years, ones that we use to life a little bit more. And then what we're also going to do is give them a little bit of a sneak peek, actually behind the scenes in terms of what we're working on at Software, more particularly around the kind of new design aspects that we're either kind of scoping right now or we're actually already in the process of developing. And again, we want to keep this, pretty interactive. So we want to show you some of these designs and really get your feedback as well on these. Um, and then at the very end, we're going to do a Q&A. So we can invite people up. You can, chat to us, any questions that you've got, anything you want to share with us, any other tips that we might have missed as well that potentially might be worth explaining to everybody else. And, throughout this kind of like open discussion that we're going to be having, feel free to jump in to the chat and drop in any questions. I'm going to keep an eye on the questions coming in. If I think that we could answer them straight away and it's in the context of what we're talking about at that particular moment, we'll just answer them on the spot. But if not, we'll definitely get to them at the very end. But please drop them in, and we can do a full session at the very end. So it should last between roughly about 40 minutes potentially. We've got an hour put aside. All right, Tom. So do you want to just take over and share your screen and show the let's bring the studio up, and maybe I can give everyone a little bit of a kind of introduction to the studio. So what we did before with everyone's registration, as you know, we asked everyone on a kind of on a scale where you kind of sit in terms of your design skills. And what we noticed is, about 150 people had actually registered for the event, and the vast majority of them were beginner and intermediate. And then we've also got some advanced users as well that have registered for the event. But what we're going to do is we're going to really start from the ground up. But we hope that, by the end of this, regardless of what kind of spectrum you are with your design skills, that you should be able to walk away with something. So I think a great place to start is what we call the studio in the Softr application. So this is where you're going to kind of got the canvas that sits in the middle of the screen. And this is where we kind of can see all the elements and the blocks that we're dragging across. Now, the first thing to point out across on the right is we've got this new kind of plus icon. This is something we introduced like a couple of weeks ago as part of our full kind of studio redesign that's in progress right now. So we moved the add block element from the left-hand side across to the right-hand side now, which probably, well, hopefully everyone has noticed. So if you click on that button, you'll get now an option with two tabs. Now, I think it's just worth explaining the difference between these two tabs here. So the first tab we've got, which is selected by default, is what we call the static tab. And these are all the static block elements that we have in Softr. And the reason we call them static is because you can add these blocks, but you don't necessarily have to have like Airtable or any dynamic content or data coming to these blocks, right? So you can add them across, and you don't really have to have Airtable set up at all. If you want to just design like a nice website, landing page, coming soon page, you can use all these static blocks, and you don't have to be using the Airtable integration whatsoever. Now the next tab is what we call a dynamic tab. And the reason it's called dynamic is because data, the vast majority, well, all of these blocks require a connection and synchronization with Airtable. So we take the data from Airtable, we add these blocks, and then these dynamically update with the data that is sitting in the Airtable base. So that's the kind of difference between the two different types of block. So as you know, all these blocks are fully mobile optimized, which is one of the best things about Softr. So that's optimized for mobile and tablet, and obviously we've got the desktop view. So up the very top, you'll notice the kind of three silhouettes of the mobile, desktop, and the browser view. So what we always suggest is, when you're building in this, you can kind of like tab between the three different views and see what it looks like across the different device types. And we've also got the ability to preview, which is a really handy feature. So you don't have to click publish every single time you want to see the changes that you've made. You can click the publish button, and then you can actually see what it would look like if you were to actually publish this live. So the next thing, just to give you a quick demo, is just obviously on the left-hand side. So we've got the pages settings, so you can see all the different pages that you've added. And then we've also got the theme settings, which we're going to go into in more detail in a second. And then we've got the data tab, which will be actually changing probably next week. We're making a number of changes to those, so we'll explain that probably later on today. And then we've got the overall settings, kind of global settings, which is obviously got your integrations. You can change your fav icon up at the top. You can connect a custom domain. You've got your SEO settings globally. That's your kind of all the kind of global settings that you need are sitting in there. So we'll jump across into we'll get started in the theme, I guess, Tom, and you can probably take over from here if you want.
Yep, cool. So I suppose the theme tab is like a really quick and easy way to kind of access your global styling settings. So everything from your base text size, what your heading and text and body font even is, the color of both of them, how you style the button by default. So the main thing is that the first thing that you can kind of do when you're designing your, I suppose, your application is that you kind of head into this theme setting, you set your base styles, and then if you want to make any changes along the way, maybe there's a different button that you want to stand out against the usual design. You know, you can tweak that later, but this kind of applies it to every single block that you add in there and after. So obviously, one of the reasons why we kind of want to kind of set this standard here is that we want to make it really accessible for users. One of the things that we have by default is 16 pixel on the font sizes. This is kind of the go-to size for accessibility. You know, we've got a nice legible font, Open Sans as a rule, but you know, you've got the whole of Google Fonts to kind of explore here. And there's a lot of fonts. We're going to go into it in a bit, where you can kind of look on the Google website and kind of compare them against each other. You can also, there's another website that we've included where it will show you popular pairings that other websites are using on the internet. So like, it's quite overwhelming if you come from this as a non-designer, but we're going to try and take as much of the guesswork out as possible by just setting you up with a really good baseline. So yeah.
So Tom, is it worth just kind of actually going to put a bit of demo here of we can make some changes and see them actually happening live? And it's also worth explaining to everyone, you know, this is obviously the global settings, and then we're going to be then going down in the hierarchy. The next stop down is the block level style settings. Yep. And then we can go one step even more granular, which is the field level style settings. So we're going to start at the top and work our way down, but we're going to show you kind of live with this demo page that we've got up. And then also, I don't know if you mentioned this already, Tom, but at the very end of this workshop, this actual website and this application that we're using as a demo with all the different resources that we're talking about today, we're going to actually publish this so everyone can actually get access to this at the end of the workshop.
Yeah, absolutely. So this, basically we're building the resources that we're going to share with you as an application that we're going to share after this. So it's pretty productive, I think. So what we're going to do is, so if we're doing this as like a Softr project, I'm going to go and find the fonts that we use. So for our heading font, we use Poppins. So you can see you can use the search bar. So if you know the font that you want to use, you're not going to have to scroll through all several hundred of these fonts. So you can click on that. Cool. And you can then select the weight. And I think, we use semi-bold as a rule. So yeah, there's probably a good thing to mention here is that like, if you've already imported a block, it's not going to, Sam, am I right in saying that it won't, or should it be doing that? Should it be updating it just on the fly there?
No, you've got to click save at the very bottom.
Of course, yep. So, yep. And then we're going to, for our body font, we're going to use Inter.
Yeah, we don't want to do it in live time because people want to just maybe apply the settings and then click save. But it's Oscar obviously mentioned good feedback about the forums there. The fonts, he prefer to see them in live time and save some time. So it's definitely something we're going to be considering.
Yeah, for sure. For buttons, yeah, I mean, this is pretty spot on, to be honest, near enough.
Yeah, I mean, our default settings are default for that exact reason, right? But yeah, there's, Tom, it might be worth just explaining to people in terms of, we spoke about it earlier, but like a call to action. There's obviously a lot of accessibility options that we should be considering as creators of websites and applications. We don't want like very jarring colors that make it actually quite hard to see. I think there's a common misconception that calls to action should really, really stand out, and they should to an extent. But I've seen people using like lime green with white text. And it really does hurt the eye. So I think really just trying to consider, like, is this readable? I've done it in the past where I had this really nice, what we would nerdily call a seafoam green, and I was married to that color, and I got, every time someone went on my website, I'll get feedback from them saying this is the worst color ever, they can't read anything. So just, yeah, bear these things in mind.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think that it's a good shout that, like, I think one of the things is that almost always less is more. So like it can be like super tempting to go super crazy with everything and like have a load of fun. But you also got to remember that, like, as a rule, like people want to spend time on this application, on this website. And so the easier on the eyes it is, the more accessible, the better, for sure. So as you see, I just clicked save right there, and it's updated the heading font to Poppins, which is what we use for our brand. So that's now applied it to all the blocks where we have a title component. So you can see here on the call to action and here in the header as well.
Yeah, and the body text is usually around about 16 pixels. That's a kind of standard web format for legibility. So that's the kind of default we set it at, but you can obviously move it down. Some people have between 14 to 18 pixels. That's a kind of spectrum that some people work in. It's really entirely up to you, but it's great to set this out before, right? That's what we're trying to say. Once you've got the general structure of your website, you've not done any design yet, jump straight across to the theme settings and define that your theme relatively early on, because that will cascade across the rest of your pages on the website and will save you a ton of time instead of individually having to match each block to your previous block. It can save you hours of time. Also, something just to show people, Tom, would be the width, right? We've got 3 different options on the width of your website.
Yeah, for sure. So if you go straight to the bottom in advanced, now you have the option of selecting a fixed width, a full width, and a custom width. Fixed width just kind of keeps this fixed width. So no matter what kind of screen or resolution a user's kind of looking at, they're going to roughly get the same experience. So you're basically just setting the standard there. And if someone comes in with an ultra wide monitor, they're going to have a lot of white space basically on either side. But that's fine because all the content is still where you want them to see it. So then you can have full width, which will then actually make use of all the width in your browser window. So again, if someone does have a really wide monitor, it's going to take up a lot, it's going to take up a lot more of the screen. Now, that's not normally really preferential, to be honest, depending on what kind of site it is. If it's maybe something, if it's like I don't know, an application like Google Sheets or something like that, right? You want to make use of all of that real estate. But if you're really trying to guide a user through a website, you kind of maybe want to keep it a fixed width so that you can kind of make sure that the way you've designed it, hasn't gone all skewed because of someone else's massive browser size. You can also set a custom width. Again, we have a pretty standard width size. You can go up and down. Don't believe you can go any further down than this. I think this is the minimum that we have to make sure that the content, is actually viewable in a normal way. So yeah, you can increase it to your heart's desire, really. But yeah, I usually kind of stay within fixed width for my Softr apps. But yeah, play around and see what's best for you. There's with a lot of these things, these are all kind of, it's quite subjective. There are best practices, but your use case might be different to what we're doing right now. So just experiment and see what's best for you. So yeah, should we go into a little bit of styling of this application? And
100%. Let's really start styling. Yeah. So let's start using the application, show some people what we can actually do with this, because I've seen a bit of a demo of what Tom's kind of put together, and it really does make these websites look fantastic. Yeah, so like when you add in these blocks, like we're working really hard on making sure that there's like a good standard to start with, and that kind of anything else you want to do after that is like
how you brand it, right? So that's something actually when we go into later, we're actually working on improving that even further. So you might not see, but we've got a navigation bar here. So one of the first things I want to do is I'm gonna style this a bit. So let's add a logo. And I've got one here. Obviously you can't see it, but we're gonna change the background color of this. Let's pick the softer purple that we have. It's like a very, very dark purple. I think that's looking pretty good. You can see the logo all right there. Now I can obviously tweak this logo to make it bigger or smaller. Really matter, you know, you may have to change it a bit here and there. If you've got like a square looking logo, you might want to make it a little bit smaller. If you've got a long, wide logo like we have here, I need to decrease the width even, just to kind of make sure that, you know, it's not taking up all of the screen here. But yeah, there's quite a lot of flexibility in how big you want to have this. But generally, you want to keep it around this size. Again, quite subjective. So let's go back. Obviously, you can see we've got some buttons here and links. Now, with the button here, we want to make sure that this is as contrasting as possible from the navigation bar. We want to kind of draw the user's eyes there. So, you know, if you've got a dark navigation bar, try and get that to stick out. Don't, you know, have a super dark looking button to go with it, because that's not going to stand out. So try and keep the contrast up as much as possible. And then obviously you can see that we can play about with the padding to the top and the bottom. This makes the button taller. You know, again, we'll generally keep these in parallel. Otherwise you start getting some weird looking button that looks like the code's gone wrong somehow. The padding on the left and right, it doesn't matter too much, but you add it too much one way, it might start looking a little bit off. So I think a lot of this is just tinkering and getting like a good balance. And again, we've made it as easy as possible. In a lot of other application building tools and website building tools, you know, you're given just like a width in pixels and like, you know, just like a really confusing way of how you may want to change these. But like for here, we've just got simple plus and minus. You want it wider, you want it shorter, thinner even. You know, you've got some freedom to do that. You can add a border as well. So if you didn't want it filled in, you could also remove this background color. Why would that work? There we go. Brilliant. So as you can see now, I've just got a border. You can change the thickness of that. I normally stick around small and medium. Tend to think any thicker, it starts looking a little bit strange. You don't normally see a lot of websites that have such a thick border, but maybe the theme of your website and the brand is really quite cartoony. But you know, we've got the freedom to do that. You can change dotted, dashed. Generally, I just stay within solid, to be honest. I normally have a solid button and then like an outline button. I kind of stick pretty similar to that. Change the roundness, so you can have it looking fully circular to fully square. We usually sit in the middle with large. And one thing that when I'm going through the rest of this application is I'm going to try and mirror these attributes that I've applied to this and keep them all looking consistent, because overall that kind of adds to what the overall aesthetic. So let's start playing around with the hero now. So it's pretty bare at the moment. It's not very eye-catching. It's not too inspiring. So we've got a space on the right here where I'm going to pick some imagery. There we go. So that goes a lot nicely with the Softr design resources. Now we do have some stock imagery that you can kind of pick from a library. So whether it's stock photos or whether it's illustrations. We've also linked to a few different websites where you can find these illustrations. Generally, you want to kind of keep it relating to what you're saying in the your header. Now, this is not really sitting against this white background too well. It's not really popping out as much as I'd like it to. So one thing you can do is that we allow you to add a background image. You could also add a color, but in this case, we're going to add an image. So I'm also going to go into my assets, and then I'm going to pick here. So here's a nice gradient kind of background image that I put together using our brand colors. So again, I'm staying on theme. I'm picking colors from our brand and trying to make it feel cohesive. Now, what you can see with this is because we've added this this background image in, this really makes the images here pop. One thing that's always important though is if you do add a background image or a color, you want to make sure that your text is still readable, right? So make sure that contrast is always still on point. You know, if you start adding a dark color here and then you know, it's not sitting right against it. The main thing is that people want to read what's going on here. So find your balance, basically. Another thing is that whilst we allow you to add background images to a lot of these blocks, it doesn't necessarily mean you should probably go in and like add a background image to everything, because then it stops being this nice, you know, this nice branded touch that you've added to something, and it starts becoming really boring, and then it kind of looks a bit crap. So let's now go into the list block. So there's a lot of things here we can tweak. You know, from whether we have our filters on the top, you know, the left or the right. Wouldn't recommend you like having like a mixture of different filters on left and right. Generally, you know, generally when I'm building stuff in Softr, like I'm keeping stuff on top and on the left. But in this case, I've got everything sitting on the left because it makes sense. You know, we've got the categories, you know, illustrations, mockups, and then whether they're free or paid. So yeah, we can go in now and start playing about with the design of these. So you've got your label here, obviously. So this is the all categories. Now I'm changing. Maybe I want this to be a bit bigger than the actual tags themselves. I can play with the padding at the top and bottom. So padding is basically the space between this white space here, the space between, you know, the tags and the label. So maybe we want to give them a bit of breathing space. So let's do that. And then we've also got the top and bottom. So we can kind of send it a little bit lower on the page. I think it's actually fine like this. Okay, then the actual options themselves. We can play about with the roundness. I think, yes, very subtle, but you can see that the roundness is decreasing as I'm clicking it. I think that looks pretty good, but actually, maybe we'll just stick to uphill. I think that looks fine. You can change the border color. Maybe you want it a bit darker to stand out a bit more. Then the hover border. So when your mouse is hovering over this, you want to make sure you increase this enough so a user knows that they're actually hovering over this and that they can in fact click it. And then you've got your padding from the left and right and top and bottom. So again, much like how we were doing with the button, you know, you're increasing the space between the text and the, you know, the button that it's sitting inside of. So I think that's fine. Honestly, you could play all day with this. So my advice is just to get to a point where it looks good. Okay, now let's click into this. And let's also look at the list item fields. So again, with the list blocks, these are probably the thing that require the most tweaking design-wise. So, you can see that you've got the logo here, and you might want to increase or decrease the size of this. So I think that looks good. You can choose whether to contain it, which means that you've got the whole of the image in there and it's not cropping it to the width of the list item. But we're going to use cover because it looks pretty nice. Okay, you can change the border and whether you want to make the logo round. Up to you whether you want to do that or not. I generally don't tend to mess too much with the content inside of it. So then we've got the heading. So now inside of this list item, we've got the heading, and then we've also got what kind of resource it is. So I actually want to add a bit more padding left and right because I think it's sitting a little bit too far on the left. So I would go in now, adding that padding on the left. Now you also want to do that for the content, right? Otherwise it gets a bit skewed. So make sure that whenever you're making these changes that you're kind of thinking about where else this might affect it. So because I changed that in, I need to now change the bottom to make it all fit and look as nice as possible. I think that's looking pretty balanced. And what we then can do is to the list item itself, we can style this, give it a different background color. We can give it, we can change the border. So the roundness of the border color, the border thickness. I actually like it as it is. And maybe all I'm going to do. Yep.
I was going to say, Tom, like for me, when I do my styling, would you recommend that you keep like the CTAs, the search bar, the tags, and then obviously the list items like a similar roundness, so there's not too many jarring kind of like different edges?
Yeah, for sure. Like I think definitely, like as a rule, you want to like with the search bar with these list items here, and like the button, for example. Generally, you want to kind of stick to some theme, so it does actually feel like you've gone to some effort on the design front. I think you could have the odd differing component here just for a bit of variety. Sometimes that can help it stand out as well, can help it contrast against the rest and not blend in so much. So that's one thing. So now I'm adding a shadow. I quite like this subtle shadow that I'm adding to it now. And then what you can do is that when the mouse hovers over, you can increase that shadow, which we'll see in preview.
So that's a good point. So then you want a higher shadow value to hover shadow value to the general shadow value, so actually it shows when you actually hover.
Yeah, definitely. I think it gives that effect that is kind of like being pulled off the ground, almost coming towards you. So it kind of helps indicate to the user that they can click on it.
Then I guess you could do the opposite. You could make it look like it's pushing in as well as pushing out if you just kind of change the values, right?
Yeah, for sure. And like we've already seen that like people are going quite far with the design and like doing things that we've never thought that you could do. So really I think there's a lot of like freedom to kind of express yourself on it, but I think just, be mindful of like what your intent is when building this and like who's it going to be for.
Yeah.
It may not always be super appropriate to have like neon colors and stuff like that. So okay, so we've styled this. Oh, okay, and the search bar, I forgot to mention. You can also play around with the search bar. So I actually would like this to stand out a bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on here. I'm actually going to remove the border. I'm going to pump on the shadow. I think it has this really nice kind of aesthetic look where it's kind of coming off the ground. Now, maybe on a white background, that doesn't look as amazing. So maybe we want to just add in a small subtle border just to make sure that like the user doesn't miss this. So there we go. We've got a small subtle border and we've got this really nice shadow where it's kind of like inviting you to click to search. And we're going to also increase the roundness. I think L is kind of what we've got as the baseline. Obviously, as you can see now, I've changed this border color, right? So really, I want to copy this hex code here of what I set. And then what I can do is I can go into the list item fields, and where I added the border before, I'm actually going to match it. So we've got it looking similar.
So we actually got we got some great feedback from someone just earlier. You might not have noticed it in the comments, but what someone had pointed out was that in the theme settings, we've got this color picker, like the pipette. And that allows you to then, so if you go to the coloring, I completely forgot that if you click that pipette, like we don't have that. So you can select it, the little, little pipette icon.
Yep.
Yeah, and then you can obviously find the color and it'll match it. But we don't have that actually in the studio. So that's some great feedback that we should do. We'll definitely be considering.
Oh yeah, I mean that's like super relevant to what I did. I had to copy the code in there and then I had to paste it. So like if you're then in, if I was in that search bar and I just click this, yeah, absolutely. Amazing feedback. Okay, so we've styled this a bit. It's looking nice. It's popping a bit more, I think. And we've got the see more button. Maybe we want to style this a bit more, right? So it actually, stands out a bit. So what we can do is we can go take the same approach, take this background color. Oh, no, let's go with that original color there. Again, I'm going to make it white, just so that the contrast is there. Let's get the roundness in there. And there we go. We've got this, standout see more button to invite users to see more.
Fantastic.
I think actually, yeah.
So I think we've got like about 20 minutes left roughly. So
yeah, wow.
I mean this is great so far. I think we've definitely seen. Is there any other last settings that you would that you'd like to demo or show people that they might have missed?
Yep, sorry for the sound there. No, I think, well, I mean, just like with here, maybe with the CTA, maybe a simple thing that we could do here is, you could either add a background color or you could just add like a really subtle shade of gray. Like this is one thing also, if you're making like a marketing site or something, and you've got like a long page full of different information, having a slightly different like off shade can kind of give that little bit of variance and can help it not feeling so monotonous and help like breaking up the page a bit. So yeah, subtlety is key. So yeah, okay, spent far too long designing this, but yeah, now if we go and preview that in browser, you can see we've got this nice little Softr design resources site. When you're hovering over, you can see that clearly you can click on these. You can see the contrast on these when you want to select. Maybe we should have changed the color here of the text, but that's fine. But as you can see, you can go quite far from just a white page and really brand it to your own brand. And I think that's important. So yeah, that's a little run through of some little design tips and tricks that you can do.
Excellent.
Hope it was hopeful.
That was fantastic, Tom. So, well, we can maybe get some questions at the end anyway, if there's any more that are coming up. So the next thing we're going to jump on to actually is where we get our backgrounds from, where we can get our imagery, our icons, our illustrations, some of the tools you use to compress some of our images, for example. So we're going to run through all these with you. And again, we're going to make these available to everyone after this. We're going to have this site live that we've just created here. Tom might be touching up a little bit more, but we're going to be sending out a link to this. Actually, we'll put it in the chat at the very end for everyone. We can keep updating it in live time. So do you want to kind of run through some of the, or I guess we can both do it, but bring up some of the tools that we use?
Yeah, so
And I
obviously
guess
inside the Mhm.
I was going to say we'll do, let's say we've got 20 minutes, so we'll do like maybe like 5 6 minutes in the tools. Then we're going to give everyone
Yeah,
a quick preview of what we're working on
yeah,
in the background that no one's seen yet, and then we'll do a quick Q&A at the end as well.
yeah. Sounds good. Okay, we'll storm through this. So one thing that me and Sam both like is this website called Blush.design. So as you saw that I got that hero image there that I designed myself. Obviously, not everyone is a designer, right? So Blush Design solves that by letting you have access to, a variety of different illustrations that you can use for basically anything on your application. You essentially just go to the website, you pick an art style that you like, you can actually customize the style, so you can pick from a range of colors. I believe if you pay as well, you can actually set your own brand colors. So essentially you're getting all these, really cool illustrations that are then like one click, just like branded to your brand, which is like amazing. And then you can download a PNG or an SVG and then add that to Softr or any of your marketing materials. So amazing resource.
Yeah, I'm a massive fan of this one. There's so much you can do with it.
Yeah, yeah. So next, coolers. Have you seen this one, Sam?
Yep, it's the only one I use as well. It's just so easy to
Yeah,
use. You don't even, you can create an account. It's free. Obviously, it saves your palettes. But yeah, you can definitely give a little bit more information than I can about this.
yeah, definitely. So like coolers is basically, um, it's almost like Pinterest for colors, right? You can kind of go through and find that like trending palettes, just like color palettes that people have used and that they like on their website. Because again, this is all one of these things that if you come to Software without a design background, or if you like you want to build something but you aren't necessarily a designer, you might not know what are the what's a trending palette at the moment, or like what you should even start with, right? So this is a great way, and like I use it all the time, right? Because like I don't have this like sixth sense where I just know what colors work. I still have to kind of look and like inspect, and like there's just unlimited amounts. So great resource to find like colors for your projects.
Yeah,
What's
I mean,
next?
and it fits really
Hmm.
easily with. So when we say the hex numbers, I mean, there's different standards you can use to bring in your different color palettes, but typically the majority of us use hex numbers, and these are they're
Mm,
six characters long. Is that right? Typically, and they start with
yeah,
a hash. Um,
yeah,
so you just basically copy and paste the hex number and paste it into Software into the little color block, and then it'll take that exact color for you across.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Good point to mention that. Yeah. Um, Next one is Undraw. So some of you may be familiar with this actually, because we do actually have it inside of the studio. So you can obviously go into Studio straight away and click and select one. But one thing that's also useful is that you can go on the website. This gives you a really big canvas to kind of look at what it is, and there's obviously keywords as well as what describing what the imagery is doing. But another thing that you can do is actually you can I don't know if you can see, but there's like a little purple square in the top right. You can actually select whatever color you want. So again, your brand's color, and that will automatically push all those illustrations and give them that accent color. So again, instantly brandable illustrations. And then Softr IO, we actually have our own a couple of design tools here. So we've got SVG waves and SVG shapes. So these are essentially just vector shapes that you can use on your illustrations. You can download them as a PNG or as an SVG. We do allow people to upload SVGs as like backgrounds, as logos, as images. So you can use that. One of the differences between SVGs and PNGs is that an SVG is what you call a vector, and a vector can essentially be scaled up infinitely and it won't pixelate. PNG, whatever size you export it as, stays like that.
So, great point, Tom. So, Christopher actually asked a question. He was saying, do you have a recommendation regarding file format for images? PNG
Mm.
slash JPEG slash other. and also the size regarding site speed. So size regarding site speed, I can quickly answer that one. That's usually below 100 kilobytes is like the optimum. That's quite a very small file size. Um, so, maybe like keep it sub 500 kilobytes for like optimum, and that'll obviously speed up your website. But in terms of the file format, what's your kind of thoughts on that, Tom?
Yeah. So generally, I tend to use either SVG or PNG. PNG is great, one, because it's a lower file type than necessarily a JPEG. JPEGs are normally for your kind of your photography,
Mhm.
where it kind of needs to capture a lot of that, and there's a ton of different pixels going on. But a PNG might be just like a single color illustration, like you've seen, and obviously it's a great small file type, but also the background can be transparent. So when you saw earlier, when I was adding that background to the hero image, you can kind of see how it blended in instantly with the background. That's something that you're going to need when you're exporting your illustrations from, whether it's Undraw, whether it's Blush. You need to export those as a transparent PNG. Now they'll guide you through it and
Yep.
make it easy, but that's just a good thing. Like if you ever get a designer or you mess around in the design tools yourself, make sure that it's a transparent background. Saves you a lot of headache. So here's another one as well, font pair. So I talked about this earlier, but it's just a great resource where you can see where other websites, so for example, On Deck, what Google font pairings they used, or other websites. So you can kind of scroll through all these different websites that are using Google fonts, some well-known sites, some not. But you can also explore like trending fonts and stuff. Because again, there's like a million different fonts or whatever on Google. So it's really hard to know what you can use. And when you see, usually what happens when I like a font, it's because I've seen it on someone else's website and I'm like, I
Yeah.
really want to use that. And then I go to Google and then I'm like, is it there? Yeah.
This is I've never heard of this one. This is amazing because I don't have the design eye to work out font pairings, but I see other websites and I think they've done a great job. This would save
Yeah.
me a ton of time, so I'm gonna check this out for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good one. And then is there anything else? Squoosh. Sam, do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so this is a Squish.app. Actually, I think they were bought by Google, but they keep that quite quiet. So it's actually a really powerful tool. Essentially, there's no registration. You just jump in this website. It looks exactly like this. You can drag or you can upload your image. So if you're on Unsplash and you've got these like 10 gig beautiful images that are just huge, right? Then what I want to do is massively compress that. And there's loads of tools out to do that, but some of them are just really overly complex or they cost money. This is a browser-based compression tool. Literally just drop the image in there. And what it'll do is it'll create a divide down the screen instantly. And it will show you what you can just change with a little slider, the quality. And what it'll do is you can reduce that down to like literally 5% of the file size of what it was initially, and it still keeps like a very similar like resolution. So they're doing a lot of magic in the back end, but you can drag the slider and see what it looked like initially full size, and then what it looked like now you've compressed it, and you just
That's
click down,
amazing.
and then you just click download. So it's like no registrations, totally free, saves you a ton of time.
Yeah.
So check that out. And then someone also put, Sarah mentioned tinypng.com is a good resource for image compression.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think I may have used that at one point. Yeah. I think all these are good, like, especially like Scrooge, right? How you said there with being able to compare like before and after, like, because it's kind of like in the past I've compressed something and then I've gone to upload it and then I'm like, this looks terrible. And then I've gone back
Yeah.
to the software to then try and recompress it. So yeah, that's a great shout on Tiny PNG. Awesome. What else? Okay. Now's the time to kind of show a little bit of what we've been working on and what's to come.
Yeah. So
So yeah.
far away. I mean, this is just a bit of an insight in terms of what we've been working on.
Mm.
As most of you are fully aware, particularly with the updates we've been sending on a weekly basis, we're doing a bit of a kind of a drip fed update to the overall user interface that you can see today. So instead of like launching it all at once, we're kind of like drip feeding it out and getting feedback. So we're getting close to the end, put it that way. There's still quite a bit of work to do in some of the design settings. ironically, of what we're talking about today. But the vast majority of what we've been doing is we're like at that kind of what would you say, like 70% completion of this whole UI change. So what we're going to show is just a few of the things that we're working on as we speak, and they're kind of on their way.
So we mentioned earlier about obviously that we've got our blocks. There's quite a lot of blocks going on, and that like the goal is to make these default blocks as, you know, aesthetically sound as possible. So we're kind of going back up now through all our blocks and we're redesigning them. So, you know, you'll notice that like the general skeleton of these are the same, but we're just kind of revisiting these, making sure that like what's there when you first add that block is like, you know, solid, and that really you wouldn't need to do anything. You can, but you wouldn't necessarily need to. So this is what we're going through. So you can see there's obviously the list block. You know, we've added a little bit more space, a little, you know, there's some more like curving on it naturally. Again, if you're not into the curves, obviously, you know, lessen them, remove them if you want to. But that's, you know, we wanted to kind of, we actually took the design system that we've been building the software, and we've used components that we've used to build the studio to build the blocks, essentially, because we've spent time making that. Yeah, right. It's pretty meta. Like we've spent like all this time like designing that, so we might as well like pass it on as well and like, you know, reuse these components. So yeah, you can see there's like the sign up block, there's payment blocks, there's you know, there's a pricing block you can see a little bit of. But yeah, essentially we're going across the board. So I couldn't fit, you know, this is not even like 10% essentially of what we're redoing. So yeah,
I mean, I guess every single component is going to facelift at this stage. So
yeah,
we just, as Tom said, we're really just trying to modernize it, clean it up, and I mean, from what we can see now, this looks absolutely fantastic so far. All right, what's next? What else we got coming?
yeah. So you'll be aware of the studio more or less on the left-hand side. But one thing that we're working on really hard now is obviously this sidebar on the right. So, you know, basically all of you will be aware that, you know, you've got these icons towards the top, and then you've got, you know, all these similar drop downs, but essentially we've just taken it with our new design system. We've, you know, improved the UX in areas where we think things need to be a bit clearer, where things maybe, you know, can be a bit more efficient, where we can save a bit of space here and there. One thing that we did do was that instead of those kind of vague icons that we had at the top right, we've actually taken this tabbed approach. So you'll see, let me see if I can guide my mouse. There we go. Can you see my mouse? But we've got, you know, we've got now these different tabs. So right now we're sitting in the data tab. From here, you can see for this list, it's mapped to the Agile Product Planning Airtable base, and then it's then mapped to a specific table. But then you can move on to the features on the second tab, and then you can start playing about with how, you know, how the information is shown, what different list items you're showing. So this is all very similar to what you're using from a UX point of view, but we're just kind of improving it across the board and making sure that everything looks really great. I think, you know, we all agreed, like as a team, that we think we're building one of the nicest looking no code platforms, and like we can't wait to like get it out there in front of everyone. It's been a long journey.
Yeah,
in a short amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah, we're super close. And again, just on top of this, as you know, we're continuing to bring out new blocks that will give you different functionality. So we've had a lot of like feedback, you know, recently, people looking for more horizontal blocks instead of vertically stacked. We're doing that. With the dashboard, people want some of the dashboard blocks that can sit side by side instead of vertically again. Again, that's something we're soon to roll out. So again, the feedback is incredibly important to us. So, you know, we're going to be doing more sessions like this, hopefully in the future, and we can get this feedback. Some of the questions have been absolutely fantastic. We're going to take note of everything that everyone said so far. Again, we've got the Slack community, best place, because That's where me and Tom are snooping about, looking to understand what people are kind of upvoting, what they're asking for, what could be improved. So we're continually iterating, and the majority of the iteration all comes from the actual community of users. Um, have we got anything else to share, Tom, or are we going on to the Q&A next?
Yeah, and also like we're also going to be, getting more icon kits. We're going to be working with illustrators to get, new unique illustrations for you to use in your application. The more that you can do inside of the studio and the less you have to search outside, the better. Sorry for the noise outside if you can hear that. Yeah, so that's what we're working on at the moment.
Brilliant. Okay, well, hopefully that gives everyone a bit of insight. So I think, at this point we're running out of time, but there has been obviously a number of questions. I've been trying to answer them in live time in the Q&A, which I think I've done the majority of. Does anyone want to potentially come up and ask a question? Because if you do, let me know.
And Sam, do we have any flexibility on this? Can we like go over by 5 minutes at all, or?
Oh yeah, we can go over by like a couple of minutes, definitely. We're not gonna it's not gonna be a super hard stop, but
Yeah.
So well, there is a few questions. I'm just trying to make sure they're definitely related to the design aspects that we're discussing. Okay, well, that's Jonathan's got like a couple of questions, but I wonder if Jonathan actually wants to come up and actually ask the questions. Jonathan, if you do,
text is fine as well, right?
Yeah, text is fine. There's no pressure,
Yeah.
but if you want to come up and actually ask, just let us know, and we can invite you up. But I can happily.
Yeah.
So we've got two people have raised their hands actually. So we've got Cole and Stephen. Do you want to, Tom? Do you want to like invite like Cole or Stephen up?
Yes.
Go to the
I
attendee.
think. Now, would I allow to talk? Is
Yep.
that
Yep.
sounds like it could be it, doesn't it?
Yeah. And
Cole, can you hear us?
Hi, how's it going, guys? Can you hear me?
Hey, Cole.
Love
Yep.
the product. I just had a couple of questions. So I was exploring some of the templates earlier, and I noticed that in the forms they actually had the HTML tags to format how the text in the forms looked.
Yeah.
I was wondering if we could get like kind of like a kind of guide, like, hey, here's how you can format your stuff in the forms or like inside of the inline text boxes, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good to know actually. Yeah.
Because
We'll
I was playing around and like you can like change the format, like the bolding and like paragraphs, all that stuff, and I was like, oh wow, how come no one's talking about this?
Yeah. There definitely there's a few hidden bits of functionality that we're probably not good enough at telling people about or shouting out about enough. That's probably one of them. That like the hidden fields are ones that people I think once they get their head around it, they're like, wow, this unlocks like loads more functionality. We're continuing to write more documentation. We're going to be trying to create like loads more like small video clips as well and tutorials just to explain a little bit better about some of the functionality. As you can see, the rate that we're pushing things out, the video that we made last week is now out of date because it's got a new UI or a new functionality. So we're definitely up against it. But no, that's great feedback, Cole. I appreciate that. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss? Any other questions at all?
Yeah, this is less product focused and more like just I guess like Softr community stuff. But I'm on like the Softr experts page, and I was wondering if there's like any kind of like graphic I could put on my site, like certified Softr expert or something kind of like that,
Yeah.
Because right now I kind of have like a DIY one that I made myself in Canva. So
I'm sure it's great. Tom's your guy, though. I mean, this is actually that's great feedback. I mean, obviously, Cole, we've got our the experts catch up hopefully next week if you're attending that.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's great feedback, particularly to have on that.
Yeah.
That's something we can do. It's really easy.
Awesome. I did actually do some explorative designs a little while ago, so it has been noted, and like for sure when we have this catch up, I think it'd be really cool to have some kind of badge that people can add to their website. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, and then I guess
Awesome.
my last thing is I was talking to Artur about this, but if I wanted to display the Made with Software branding on my site, if there was a way that could link to like my affiliate link, so then I could actually have like an incentive to put the like Made with Software branding on my site, and then I could get like the potential referrals and commissions and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's. I think someone else mentioned that as well. I think it might be Sarah or someone in the.
Oh yeah, I typed that in the comments as well.
Oh, okay, you typed that as well. Yeah. Again, that's really good insight and feedback. Again, it's something we can do it pretty easily. So I will take note of that.
Well, that's all my questions, guys. I don't want to take up too much time.
Appreciate it, Cole, and I will speak to you next week, hopefully at the next catch up.
Awesome, sounds good.
Cheers, Cole.
Cheers, Cole.
Should we I think Stephen was next. Maybe invite Stephen up.
Yeah.
And then we've got then I guess we've got one more after that, which is Roman.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hey, Stephen.
Hi, well, thanks so much. This is an awesome product. I love it. My question is regarding just integration between blocks and if there's anything on the roadmap, just for a bit more connectivity from space to space. And one example might be, I have a background image on one block, but really it's a kind of a big image and it could take 2 blocks. If I split the image in half and I put one image on one block and the second half of the image on the second block, it can perform a bit erratically if I'm trying to use padding or or just figure out how to attach it. So it would be very helpful to have like some way to have an image, share blocks, a way for blocks to have just a bit more cohesion and seem like they belong together more. In the current environment, it seems like when I add a block, I've got to just like slice and dice up the background just to get it to work or any elements. So that's a first question. And what I would recommend is a deep dive into design, because I know we did a lot of stuff that's really helpful, but just also very, kind of beginner. Is it something we can do to have like an advanced design session?
Oh, definitely. This is really like you say that the first one that we've ran. So we're kind of going for like a general baseline, keeping it relatively generic because we've obviously got quite a different spectrum of people with design experience. But more than happy if there's a good bunch of people who want to do a deep dive, then we can get really deep. Get into that. With the question with regards to the blocks and the kind of cohesion between them and stuff like that, yeah, it's a great point. I think what we do, particularly with the product, is we need to make sure that it doesn't just perform well on the web, because that's the easy bit. It's making sure it performs well across other breakpoints, across the mobile and tablet. So I guess to some people it could look like it's very constrained, the design. But the reason we want to constrain it is because we've seen time and time again using other products is you get a million options to change every single element that you want. But when you do that, it breaks everything, right? And particularly for no coders that don't really understand the HTML and CSS and that kind of it'll look great, and then you scale it and it just breaks straight away. So I think we're kind of approaching it in a kind of modular way, and each block has to perform extremely well across the different breakpoints. But what we are considering is trying to create like more containers where like you could have like a container, and then within that, then you could have maybe 2 blocks within that container. So it looks like they're kind of bound together, and they have a little bit more consistent properties. So kind of using that kind of like box day of, like container within a container, and you can kind of move them around and potentially, like being a little bit more flex based. So you could, stack them vertically.
So it's restrained on your core requirement of being mobile friendly. I see that. That's awesome. It's on your radar. One more question, if I could just sneak it in, and that's with our system, we have some changes that are like really easy tweaks, or if we see like there's a change we want to make, it works really well to do the preview and release. But we also have big changes. And the problem we're currently running into is if I have a change that I'm testing with some users before I push it out, but I also have a small change that just has to get done, I can't push the small change out in an easy way without pushing through the large updates. So it would be extremely helpful to have a development, a UAT, multiple staging environments where I can push out smaller changes while I have the larger ones on dock and not making them public. Is that something you're working on creating, or could you add it to your backlog?
Well, yeah, it is quite complex when you start creating branches. But no, it's a very good point. You're certainly not the first one who's mentioned it, Stephen. You know, we've had discussions internally about a version of this, which is maybe just like a potential environment where you might use your subdomain, and you have your custom domain, and then you have the ability to deploy um, between the two. Like, so it's not one giant publish button. You could just deploy to the subdomain and test it on there first. But in terms of creating then branches in between those environments, that's definitely a step up. It's certainly not in the roadmap for the next kind of quarter, or maybe in the next couple of months. It's certainly though on a list of backlog requests. So we'll certainly let you know.
Great, thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Stephen. And I think we got one last question before we're going to jump, but I think that's Raman. He's had it.
There we go. Hey, can you hear us? Can we hear you?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes. How you doing?
Yes.
Yeah. Hello, Sam. Hello, Tom. First of all, it was a really nice session. I'm from India, and I'm not that technically useful with these kind of things, but I really liked it. At least it is easy from Discord, using Discord, and but I like it. And I just want to tell you that I really like this session, and I want these kind of session every week. Is that possible?
Well, that's great feedback, and I mean, I don't know if we'll be ready to do them every single week, but we're definitely going to do more of them. Like, this is this kind of sort of feedback. We were just doing this for the first time. We wanted to understand if anyone gets any value. So thanks so much, Raman. We really appreciate it. We're definitely going to be doing more. It might not just be about design. It could be about like a whole host of different topics. So we're considering, there's been a lot of SEO questions, so we might just do a full deep dive on best practice SEO. We might be discussing a little bit more about some of the more advanced structural elements of Airtable, using linked records, lookup fields, things like that. So there's going to be a number of different workshops with different people presenting across the team. So you'll get them in the weekly update email, and we're going to keep everyone up to date. But we're definitely going to be doing more of these, so keep an eye out.
Yeah, I said this. Oh.
Yeah, come on, Tom, please go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying to Sam, I think the other day, that it would be really cool to get some of the users to actually submit their own applications and websites, and we can kind of do like a live critique, and where we can maybe suggest that things could be improved. I think that'd be really cool for users to share off what they're working on as well.
Where to submit our work, Tom?
If we do something like that, we'll be sure to like post it out on the newsletter, and like we'll most likely have a microsite or a page up on the website allowing users to do so. So or it might be in the Slack. So you'll be aware if you kind of follow us on the Slack or the newsletter.
Okay. That's it from my side. I think I'm really happy to join this workshop.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Raman. Really
to have you.
That. And thanks, Sarah, as well, for the feedback. She's enjoying this as well. It means a lot. Well, I guess that's it for today. So again, Softr community Slack, me and Tom are on there. So again, feel free to follow up with any of the questions. I think Jonathan had quite a few larger questions and bits there. So I'm going to take note of those, Jonathan, and I'll get back to you. Any other unanswered questions, drop them in the Slack channel, tag me or Tom in, we'll get back to you as soon as we can. There's going to be a recording of this as well, so as soon as the recording is available, it will probably come out on the weekly update email, but usually we'll share things first in the community Slack channel, so keep an eye out. And then lastly, We will be sharing all the resources as well that we mentioned. I think one of the community members, Gary, actually listed them all out in the chat. Absolute legend. Thanks so much. But we'll put the website up for you, and we're gonna keep adding more because we've got tons more. But yeah, thanks everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers all. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.